Melina, thanks so much for joining me on an N of One. I'm so glad to have you today.
My pleasure to be here, Matt.
This is great because, everybody has a different journey. And so the whole point of this is always just to tell your individual story. So much of the time in behavioral science, we are looking at population level things. What's true for the vast majority of people or the average person. But everybody is an outlier in one way or another. And this is our chance to sort of explore your outlier story. So let's start at the beginning where we belong. So if I had tracked down, I get in my time machine, I go backwards in time, and I go find like 6-year-old Melina, like what did you think was the path? Where did you think you were going?
Oh, well, back then I probably wanted to be a detective, sort of, well, not to solve gruesome murders back then, but like solve mysteries. I loved anything, any kind of adventure. 6 years old, and like growing up until maybe I was 15, I was I loved everything about the Bermuda Triangle, all these things. That's what fascinated me.
Aha, I like this. And science is a mystery, right? It's not shocking that your investigative techniques potentially led you here, although you might have been imagining a more Indiana Jones version of it. There's not so much tomb raiding in our version of science, but there is a lot of mystery. And
Yeah, we are detectives in some sense.
100%, right? 100%. And when that came to school, as you think about, Melina's 6-year-old detective, were you gravitating towards science in school? Was it like where did it sort of come to light academically for you when you thought about school at, as you're going into middle school and starting to get to choose, where do you specialize?
Well, I was pretty much good at everything. I paid attention in class. I was curious. I was good from art to physics. So I enjoyed like the variety. So when the time came to choose like A levels and then later on, I think I know. I mean, I chose the safe ones, right? Mathematics, economics, physics, and stuff. So
Well, but those aren't, I mean, I don't know if those are safe, right? They're not any more safe than language arts or, the other kinds of things you could choose. And those are, physics, math, those are a very particular sort of bent. Did you like numbers at the time? Was math a thing you were into, or it was just like, this feels like it leads me on a path?
yeah, I love numbers. I loved and mathematics was very easy for me to get. Uh, I mean, it was safe in the sense that, from the background, my background. So my father had like a PhD in economics. My sister was, she's 6 years older, so sort of like a role model throughout my life. So she'd gone to study accounting and finance. So, like it was safe in that sense. So like my background was all about, okay, this is the path you should follow. I
This
loved
is what
it.
the family does. The family business is math and economics. Like, all right.
Yeah, pretty
And
much.
And if I had asked you sort of as as you were thinking about your ALOs, if I asked you the sort of 15-year-old Melina, hey, what do you think you were going to go become a professor of economics? Was that sort of like the version of the future that you saw?
Um, no, actually, I knew math, back in high school. We just did like one course of economics, but a lot of math. I got done all the math. So I knew math, I loved math. So I chose to study math for my bachelor's. I put economics in so that becoming a professor was not, the only option. Because
Mm.
that's how I thought about it. So I wanted to like open it up and like make it a little bit more marketable. Um, yeah,
So it wasn't
that was the rationale.
so even early on, it wasn't like you were like it's academia or bust. You were sort of a hey, let's keep our option open. Let's look around. Let's see what out there in the world.
Yeah, I wasn't looking to get into academia. Yeah, I was more looking into like business and organizations, working somewhere. That's how I imagine myself, like getting into a company and progressing there, like have a steady job over the years. And
As a was there a company you were like, I'd love to go work at blank as a 17-year-old?
ooh, the big names, yeah, like McKinsey, BCG, yeah, I'd love, yeah,
Got it. Like
and
consult, but
strategy consulting, yeah.
okay. So you had your eye on sort of strategy, which you did get a chance to do, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But so you had this sort of like, hey, I'm going to go become a consultant. I'm going to work my way up through the consultant ranks. I'm going to be the world's most super senior consultant, right? And that was sort of, and when you got to, when you got to LSE and started studying, did that feel like the right path for you academically? Like when you were taking classes where you were like, oh yeah, this feels natural, this feels like the right path, or was there a part of you going, maybe not?
Well, to tell you the truth, Matt, at that point, I wasn't sure because it was I didn't have any other degrees. I mean, now if you tell me, if you ask me, if I compare it to the next degrees that I got, and it was in the US and then Spain, which was like very different system. So I didn't have anything to compare it to. So I wasn't excited about it, right? I mean, it was okay. Um, but I wasn't excited about it, to be honest. But I didn't have anything else to compare to, just to say, oh, maybe I'm not on the right track.
Got it. And that can be a real problem, right? We are only able to imagine, a limited set of counterfactual worlds. And so if we haven't been exposed to things that let us, oh, that's even a possibility that you could do that thing. I remember early on when we were doing this podcast, I interviewed Pete Judo, and
Mm.
who's so much younger. And, he was like, I went to school and majored in behavioral science. And I was like, holy shit, right? Like, nobody was even saying the words behavioral science in 2004 when you and I were in school, right? Like, that was not, nobody was like, ah, yes, and there is this thing, applied behavioral science, that you're going to go do. We had, you know, my undergraduate advisor was Barry Schwartz, right? And so, of sort of paradox of choice fame, the business world was starting to maybe pay attention to some stuff, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, there's this thing over here. So you were sort of on the like, I'm going to become a management consultant, but I'm not really like jazzed about that as a thing that might happen in the world.
Well, I was yeah, I didn't have uh like a lot of options in front of me, right? And I was just trying to make like, what do people do? They study something uh that gives them the chance to get like a serious job. And yeah, that was the
Ah,
path that I had in mind when I was like yeah, back then in my
serious.
20s.
Yeah, this is serious. We're going to wear ties and carry a leather attaché case. I got it. And then you came out of school. And how did it feel coming out of school into the real world and confronting that job market? Did you come out being like, great, off I go, gangbusters, or where was that pivot for you?
I think every time there was a change, it was good. I mean, I like change. I like, especially if it's something, new and exciting. So I was looking forward to it. And I didn't, after, even though I was like very strong academically, and I knew that at some point I will do a master's, but I didn't rush into it. I got a job first because like I said, I didn't know exactly what masters, how to go about it. And so, yeah, I got a job first at a big four
And how did
in the
that
advisory.
and
Mm.
how did that feel? Was that like, so as you went into the Big Four, were you like, oh yeah, this is what I thought it was going to be, or did it feel different?
Um, it was, this is what I thought it was going to be. It had its good things, but it was also at the same, it was not as exciting as I had hoped because uh, we, you know, we finally got like a huge project, a huge government project, and that period was great. We had a lot of work to do, but you know how it is, like with consultants. I was in the advisory department, right? And it's like ups and downs. So there were at the beginning, when you're the most junior person there, there's lots of downs or like little bits and pieces that you don't see the whole picture, things like that. So it wasn't very exciting at first. But then when we got that project, it became like so. Finally, I could see what it was all about. Yeah.
Got it. So you were holding a part of the elephant and wondering what the hell is going on here. But at some point, you got to take a step back and see the whole elephant. And that part was, when you had a project you could sink your teeth into. What was the project? Tell us about what was your first project? Your first big project?
So it was about teacher evaluation system. So the way it used to be, so teachers would get promoted based on basically years of service, one bad thing. And the second is that if they got promoted, they got outside of the classroom and they had more administrative duties. So there was only one line, right? So what we proposed, so I mean, there's some teachers that deserve to be promoted, but they're very like communicative. They want to be in the classroom, so don't necessarily get them out, and of course make it more meritocratic and stuff.
That is a fun
So
project.
it
Like,
was
how do you get the right
uh,
teacher behaviors that's a great project.
it was really interesting, but of course it took years to start implementing it, trade unions, etc. Yeah.
But at least it felt complete. And at some point, though, you decide, hey, I've got to go to Stern and get an MBA. Which is a very classic thing to do in the Big Four, right? You come in as an associate, you do a bit of work, you go off and get your MBA. Was that because you sort of like those were the rails, or did you really have an interest where you were like, hey, this is something I'm specifically interested in as you go on?
I wanted to fast track things. I was still very young. I was 22. So I mean, if that's not the best age to do an MBA, right? I mean, it's better. I mean, get it like wait, have some like 5, 6 years experience before we could get into it. But I was say, okay, I'll just apply. They'll say no, so I'll apply again next year. But I got in, yeah, and it was amazing actually being at Stern. I mean, you can imagine like all the companies coming to campus. We got to go to their office, so it was a great, great, great experience. But I mean, it was what was so interesting when all this enthusiasm subsided that I met my Kinsey guys and stuff. That what stuck with me the most was like the knowledge and beats and things we got out of the classroom because the professors were amazing and like I had a few of them that really changed the way I was thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that was the first spark actually for me towards behavioral because there was Adam Brandenberger there. He taught us game theory, right? And he's sorry.
No, you're great. Do you want to get a glass of
So
water or anything? Want a break?
yeah, I'll just
Take
do
a
it.
break. Are you kidding me? This is a casual podcast. We take breaks, we drink tea. It's good.
Thank you. So Adam, I mean, he's a pioneer in like strategic thinking, game theory, etc. He had already written the book Co-Petition,
Mm-hmm.
which was about so basically change the game instead of going in and playing the game and competing for a piece of the pie. See if you can expand the pie. So that was like reframing essentially. It was an amazing. Uh, it was the first way that first time I started seeing this kind of thinking. And Adam he worked a lot on like behavioral game theory, the kind of thinking of mad things that Melina will think, that Matt will think, like this iterative thinking. And so he worked on that and like the limits of backward induction because of bounded rationality. So he was my first acquaintance with like this super professor that he's talking about something more realistic, more humane than, the drier models that I had seen up to that point. He gave
And
me, yeah,
no, go ahead. He gave you.
um, I went at the next team, what's it like teaching and being a professor, like doing a PhD and stuff. And he gave me a whole hour of his time, like talking to me about how it was, which of course, I mean, my question was not fully serious at the time because I had just finished a very expensive MBA. So it wouldn't be the best time to go and do a PhD, but it was like the first spark in my head. Became a plan B.
I love that. And so when you came into the MBA program, was the plan like, I'll get this MBA and then I just go back to the big four and I keep climbing the ladder? Or did you see that as a pivot point and you were thinking, hey, I'm going to get this MBA and then go in a different direction?
Actually, during the MBA, I tested both directions, so both like finance and strategy. I took some internships at hedge funds and tried to select the finance work, but I pivoted back to more like strategy and organizational things. Um, and the plan was I couldn't stay in the US because I was on a Fulbright scholar. I had to leave, but I could go anywhere in Europe, right? Because but no, we don't like Cyprus part of the EU. We don't need like a visa, so I could work anywhere in Europe, and that was the plan to find something, uh, like company that I enjoyed somewhere not in Cyprus.
And then, after getting that spark lit, right? Brendan and other folks are sort of like helping you see, hey, maybe there's more here. Was that still the plan as you graduated? Was like, all right, back to a company I go, and this is like back to what I've been doing?
Yes, at that point, but the company that I got in was like it was a great environment. I went to Belgium at a trade association in Brussels. So basically, a trade association is like an industry alliance.
Mhm.
So my role it was very small, 12 people, and in my department, which we held like trade and economics, there was like two of us. So I did business analysis, sense making, presenting to CEOs, talking with the European Commission people. So it was like a very good gig for someone who wanted to like grow, uh, you know, uh, in this kind of environments. But what happened then and pushed me towards a PhD, first, the CEO left and was replaced by someone who was like a very different style, very micromanagement, wanted to change a lot of things, which was, on its own was, it's something okay to put up with. But what happened simultaneously back in 2012, then we got Greece and Cyprus hit by the financial crisis, right?
Right.
We got Greece. So, I mean, I was in Belgium. I would hear over the news people were actually committing suicide because, their wages were cut so low they couldn't survive. And then in Cyprus, we had the famous bank haircut, which what happened is because the two biggest banks on the island were severely hit. They were holding Greek government bonds
Right.
which lost their value, and also they were heavily invested in real estate. So what happened is they did a bail-in. All the depositors, uh, everything above 100,000 was essentially cut to save the banks. And what was going on in my mind at that point? Sorry for the long explanation. It's just
Wait a minute. No, sorry. This is why we get on here to talk.
all right. I didn't want to get too technical, but this haircut was, by the Troika, which is like three huge organizations, right? Like the International Monetary Fund, the European Central Bank, European Commission. So all these amazingly smart guys with the best economic models, and they came up with these solutions. And at that point, I started thinking, okay, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound right. I mean, is it really the best that we
This is the
can do?
best
And
you've
I was
got? Come
following.
on, guys.
Because, we're like, okay, fine. I mean, now you'll meet the quota, right? So like you'll get your ratios up to where you should. But I mean, they were totally missing the human level, which I get, because if you get at an emergency point, I mean, you're not gonna look at like every family and everyone, but how did we really get here? And yeah, it was something that I knew I didn't want to be part of those solutions. I wanted to find something different. And that's when I went for a PhD. I mean, the opportunity cost was really low because of the crisis, and I started looking for solutions there.
And so the idea was, hey, I'll go into the PhD. I'll get as good as economics as these schmucks who came up with what is not a great solution. But because I have this, interest in behavior and game theory and other things, like I'm confident I can come up with something better than this, something more human than this.
I was reading here and there, articles already about behavioral economics. That was like 2013, right? 2012, 2013. So it was, my eye was catching bits and pieces, but I didn't know, and there weren't many PhDs on behavioral economics back then. So I chose the closest I could find, like decision making, decision science. So that's what I did.
And as you were in school, so, if we think back to your first school experience, you're like, I did it, but I didn't feel turned on by it. Then I went to an MBA and really felt like, oh man, I'm learning and I'm being stretched in new ways. So if we think of those as the endpoints, what was your PhD like? Was it more towards the like
Hmm.
plotting, early education? Did it light you up in the same way as the MBA? Tell me a little bit about coming back to education and what that felt like for you.
Yeah. So, well, you have like a variety of courses in the beginnings that every PhD candidate has to take. And actually, with the exception maybe of one or two, they were all super interesting. They were really heavy. Like I think for one course, we had to be reading like a whole book, or two books every week on top of everything else, and like make a summary and answer questions, which, I mean, for someone untrained to like speed read and stuff, it felt like a lot. Um, it was really, really interesting, and because you're given like a wide card for the first few months, maybe more, like to like just think, find your topic, find your direction. So it was amazing. It's like a safe space for thinking.
And did you think, and then I become a professor? Or is the idea still that, hey, I'm going to go run the IMF and I'm going to do this better the next time there's a crisis?
No, I didn't, and it was clear from the beginning for me. I didn't want to like stay in academia. I wanted to like see, okay, what do these guys know better? Maybe they have better solutions, and let's see, if we can find like do a bridge and find some way to implement them outside.
Got it. And so, I mean, you've been a lecturer at Cyprus, you've done, educationally oriented things, but you knew, hey, I want to go be applied. This is where I want to spend my time. This is where I want to get back to.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the goal. And I also think that if you're not applying it yourself, at some point your quality in communicating, it's going to deteriorate, right?
Right. Yes, there is a weird, sort of decay curve for academic knowledge, right? Where the longer you spend in academia, the like farther you diverge from reality, right? And so you certainly can go very deep on a topic, but it does suffer over time. And so you come out of your PhD and then back into the big four, right? Back to EY. Tell me about like where that sort of
Uh,
came out for you.
so after the PhD, well, at that point, I had been traveling and living outside Cyprus for like half of my life, and it I wanted to settle in one place because I'd been moving every 2, 3, 4 years. So the non-negotiable part was that I wanted to come back to Cyprus.
Okay.
That's where the real adventure begins because behavioral economics was non-existent back then. There was nothing, no one, no company. I mean, there was one professor at the university, but I didn't want to go into teaching. And so I had to like, create something for myself.
Hmm.
Um, I met with a lot of companies. And they would meet with me because my degrees were more conventional, right? But once I started talking to them about behavioral economics, most of them would like, they lost interest or they didn't understand. With EY, what happened is that, I mean, I went and I had the same conversation and we had sort of like an understanding, okay, come join our team and we'll see and you'll get time and you'll get like support to set it up eventually. I took this like a bit more optimistically perhaps, but it never happened because you know how it is with big fours, the projects that you have in that moment, all hands on. um there's not much space unless it's planned, and I didn't expect it to be so difficult to find, some support within. So yeah, that didn't happen, and I left on good terms, but I left to try and you know do something with behavioral economics finally.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'll use the dating analogy, right? It sounds like, hey, you were really clear in your story. You knew what you wanted to do, you knew what it looked like for you. And you talked to some companies and they were like, no. Excuse me, I got to sneeze.
Bless you.
You went on some dates and it was like clear it was not going to work, right? And then you found a company that sort of said yes, but to your point, in consulting, the wind changes in a moment, right? Because they have to follow the money of the project. So it's, in a private company like Microsoft, they can say, hey, we're committed to this function. We're going to build it out over the next 5 years, and we have the cash reserves to sort of have that kind of strategic focus, right? Whereas, consulting, you could hang out a shingle around behavioral science, but if you can't make it make money in the next couple of months, then we're going to find a different shingle, right? Because it has to bring immediate revenue. It's not like, we have these other cash businesses that are financing our expansions. Um, and what a credit to you that you knew enough about yourself and about behavioral science and the thing that you love doing to be able to step away and say, hey, because there's an alternative universe out there, right? Where Melina like
Hmm.
gets sucked in back into the big four and she just keeps going and she sort of forgets about this stuff that she's passionate about because, consulting companies can do that, right? They can pay you well and
Yeah.
suck you into projects and keep you busy enough and interested enough that you can forget some of the things that you really love and believe in. Was it a struggle to leave or you were like, nope, I know this is not it and off I go?
Um, the second,
You
there
knew.
comes a point where, yeah, there absolutely, I couldn't stay because there comes a point where that's not what you want to do, and for me, it's non-negotiable, right? And I had like had some money in the bank, and I told myself, so I'm not gonna let it fall below this benchmark, right? So I'll pursue. I'll try to like nail down things with applied behavioral economics, but I'll get other jobs at the same time, and then try to like to avoid the financial stress and having to get sucked back into something that I didn't want to.
And
And yeah.
Talk about the about going out on your own and forming, meta decisions and making the decisions. Because there's a version again where you leave EY and you just find another company, right? Join a consultancy or build a big, join something else. But you decided, hey, I'm going to try something and build something. What was that like for you as a decision?
Well, yeah, I had realized that by then that being independent has a lot of advantages, and especially if you're trying to do something that very few people understand in your surroundings. So it pretty much there's no other choice, right? So I went aggressively into a direction. So I in Cyprus, I couldn't find other people at the time. So abroad, right? So I networked through LinkedIn. I listened to everything I could. I found like the LSE seminar series. OECD had some series. Anything that I could find, any material. So I was trying to get more and more into it. And at the same time, I was learning, right? I was learning even more on the topic because as it was evolving as well, I was trying like to pick up and what are these guys doing, etc. So I went and I joined GAPS at that point as well. 2019, GAPS was formed, and I was one of the first members, I think. And then I volunteered to they wanted people to lead the different parts, different geographies. I volunteered for Europe, so I got really involved, and I pitched a lot locally. I failed a lot, but at some point, it's like didn't matter. I mean, you'd start a conversation, it's not gonna go your way, but you do it anyway. It was like that, and uh, finally, we created. We secured a partnership with another guy who used to work. He worked for BIT, and he came back to Cyprus, and together we joined the Cyprus Institute. So we have our small behavioral insights team there working with the government now.
Yeah, I mean, I think talking about failure is so important, right? I went to a very small college, and so you got one pass. If you want to run an experiment, you could go through, the intro psych class, but I wanted to run like 20 experiments. So I had to go figure out how in the world I was going to run these experiments. So, I used to do things like, I went to college outside of Philadelphia. So I would go into the Philadelphia train station and like hand out surveys and pay people $1 for a survey. And so I just had this big thing of dollar bills and surveys, and I just trade people, survey for dollar, survey for dollar. And, a lot of people tell you no, right? Like, no, people don't want to fill out surveys. And you just hear no a lot, right? And that makes you better and that helps you do things. Even when it's probably not going to work, you just try because that trying and that failing is what sort of gets you there. Was there a moment when you were like, oh man, this isn't going to work? Or were you like, I'm just going to keep doing it until it works?
Um, well, there was one moment that I was particularly disappointed, or like I didn't know how to answer. So I was meeting this like senior government official, and um, I was trying to like explain about behavioral economics, what other countries are doing, and he says to me like, young lady, there is a very good career path in project management. You should get a certificate there. And I was like, I didn't know. I mean, I didn't want to insult him. I knew he just doesn't get it. So I said, uh, but it's when you get like these comments, it's like it's really disappointing because there's such a gap. You know that gap. You wasted your time because there's no way that you're gonna get your message through.
But you
It
try.
happens, and it happens a lot. Well, yes, of course, because if you don't try, then and you learn things about yourself, how to handle yourself. You learn things about the environment, right? So now that we're working a lot through the Cyprus Institute with government people, I mean, all these experiences help, and they help you like formulate your strategy, how to approach them, when not to approach them. So it's not a waste of time at the end of the day, and you have to like knock on all the doors you can.
And so, you've straddled this interesting line between sort of, government work and also for-profit work. Do they feel different to you? Do you approach them the same way? How do you approach working with a government differently than you do in your sort of private sector work?
Um, with the government, so we have a team, and I'm not usually the one who does the approaching.
Hmm.
So because one of our leader there, he's the one with the relationships, and he knows more about the dynamics. So he's usually the one who approaches. That makes me feel great in the sense that you can do your job when it comes to you, but without having to do the pitching. But with meta decisions and with the for profit, I sort of, yeah, even though I don't knock on many doors, but when people like is they show a little bit of interest, then you have to pitch, and that is yeah, it, it's exposure again. It's like you open yourself up to rejection. You need to anticipate, and you need to try to imagine what they may want, even though they've just given you like two sentences, but you have to fill in the gaps for yourself. It's pretty challenging. Um, I find that is also a matter of like the personality of the people. So there's people who like want to work with you, and there's people who like they would pay you for a training, but they expect a consultancy project. So they would expect something much more customized, you know what I mean? And that's much harder to deal with, but
Yeah.
it's all part of the game.
And as you think about, you've got this sort of tripod, you have your work through Gabs and sort of encouraging the field. You've got the stuff that Cypress Institute is sort of working directly with the government. And then you've got, sort of meta decisions and building out this piece. Is that a comfortable, liminal space for you between those three things? Or are you tempted at times to sort of lean one way or the other if you had the opportunity?
Um, what happened, gaps and meta decisions, they are pretty well connected for me. Because at gaps, I'm working on decision making, essentially decision making in the workplace. We did a survey recently, and we have other projects in that direction, getting, essentially more research in companies. And with meta decisions, that ties really well because I'm doing like decision audits and like decision advice based on that. With Cyprus Institute, which is more with the government, uh, that's a mix. The I'm learning a lot from the people that I work with because they have like a lot of experience with working with the government and previous projects, and it's I'm learning a lot from their background, and I'm contributing from the decision making angle.
Hmm.
So it's like a mix. So like everything, I think it's gonna, and I hope it's gonna tie and make more sense in a few years. But right now, to be fair, it feels like two different mindsets. So like it's like a coin, right? And with behavioral science, like do you improve your own decisions or do you improve others' decisions? So it's like a coin. Sometimes I do the one, sometimes the other.
Sometimes
Yeah.
the other. Is there a dream project or client at Meta Decisions? Is there somebody that like, is there something you look at in the world and go like, oh man, I would love to fix behavior around that?
uh, private sector, you mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, or public sector. I'll take public sector too. You can two sides to the
public
coin. You can have two answers. Look at that.
Public sector is easier to answer. I'll tell you what, because well, it affects more people, right? And so in Cyprus, there's a lot of things that we would love to just, get our hands on. There's unnecessary bureaucracy, of course, but there's I mean, you'd go. We have these facilities where citizens go to like get their passports and new IDs. I'm not sure how you call them in English. So these designated centers for that,
Hmm.
and it's an awful journey. And they think it's great because they get like the survey said 95% satisfaction rate. But I mean, who answered the surveys, who didn't answer the surveys, how were they distributed? But it's like I've been through it recently, and like with a few fixes, you just reduce stress so much. Um, there's a lot of things within the government that I think they're very easy to improve.
What about on the private sector side? Are there dream things where you're like, man, I'd like to work on blankety blank blank blank?
Um, if there's one thing that I'd improve like throughout the sector, like the idea, like the way that we do brainstorming. So a
Hmm.
lot of, the way that the companies that I came across and worked with. So their idea is, let's have a meeting and everyone, what do you think about X and X? That's how they do it. That's a brainstorming session for them. And uh, it's really tricky to try and explain that, that's unfair, first of all, because, you haven't given the other person the opportunity to think, but, you cannot have a normal conversation. First idea is going to anchor everything else. Not everyone is going to speak, da, da, da. Uh, and that, brainstorming is mostly about before the meeting, and at the meeting you just bring up the ideas. But that, yeah, I think if we could like improve on that, that would be a huge benefit.
What is your tip for brainstorming? If you were going to improve on it, what is the better version of that that you think produces better decisions or better meta decisions?
So, is it, well, if it's like a CEO trying to like gather opinions, let's say, I mean, there was a merger and the CEO wants to say, okay, I mean, how are we going to do the restructuring? So you, the CEO with someone, I mean, you have to like set down some parameters, right? What do you want to get information on? What are the questions in your head? So you send out like a survey
Mhm.
before to the like 10, 20 people that you want to get their opinions from. They fill it, they put their name on the survey, they give reasons for like why they answered yes, I agree with that, or no, I and then you have like a facilitated discussion where like a trained facilitator start, okay, so we have like these two extremes opinions, let's start with this, then with that. Nobody interrupts. The CEO gets to hear everyone's reasoning. For example, he's still the decision maker in this scenario, but he gets to unearth like these perspectives that he wouldn't be able to, just with like chats in the hall or in the corridor.
Got it. So CEO as researcher. Uh, in your
Like
case,
he wouldn't do it, but yeah, I mean, he'd hire someone to do it.
but I think you're right that the role of many executives, all the way back to your beginning, is that there's a little bit of detective in any executive, right? You have to be willing to sort of uncover, right? And good detective work lets go of bias, right? It isn't, you know, motivated. It's not exclusionary. It's not narrow, right? Good detecting is broad and thoughtful and, you know, accepts that your theory might not be right and looks for evidence that it's wrong. Looks for evidence that it turns out that, where you get your ID is not very good and people are not very satisfied, even if you have
Yeah.
95% positive survey results. Are you having fun as a behavioral scientist?
I am, yes, I am. And I think that's that's part of the journey. I think it's been it's a struggle when you're when you're not when you're doing from one project to the next, but I am having a lot of fun, and even more so since I found like very good teams that I'm collaborating with, and that's really important, not to do this on your own, not for too long anyway.
What do you look for in good collaborators?
Um, Respect. I think it all starts with that, listening to each other. Trust to some extent. Once people have met, do you trust me to do this? Do I trust you to do this? But you have to demonstrate your skills. But then, once you have trust, and then, I mean, complementarity of skills, I would say. But that, in my case, that's usually going to happen, right? I mean, you don't have two persons with the same skills, but the more different skills that we have, like, it ties very well together.
Sure. So diversity, respect, and trust. A good recipe for anything. Well, thanks so much for taking me through your journey. I really appreciate you sort of, helping us understand a little bit about how you got here. In many ways, even though your journey had some pivots, once you found it, you found it. I mean, you knew what you wanted to do, coming out of your PhD program, and you stuck with it, right? Even when EY tried to suck you back in, I mean, you had the fortitude to say, I'm even going to go out on my own in order to do this thing. And I think that's really admirable. And I appreciate all the work that you do with GABS to sort of help promote the field of behavioral science. It is so easy as people are trying to get projects and, compete with each other, to your point about sort of co-opetition. The ultimate thing is to improve the whole size of the behavioral science pie. If, it is in everybody's economic interest for this to be a widespread, well understood field that generates high quality value for lots of companies, and that's the place that we end up. Well, thank you so much for coming and spending some time with me and sharing your story with me. I'm so glad that Melina, the 6-year-old, turned into Melina, the behavioral scientist, and that detective instinct has not left you. And so thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much.